Irony is completely dead, and we are the ones who killed it. You would be absolutely horrified to discover how many deeply held American traditions and massive corporate empires started as an obnoxious dare between idiots. Here are 50 bizarre punchlines that somehow escaped the asylum and completely took over our modern culture. 1. Hollywood executives usually take themselves way too seriously, but a movie title like Snakes on a Plane is pure, unfiltered stupidity. Originally, it was just a placeholder. The writers figured some suit would change it to Flight 121 before release. But the early internet found out, and humanity collectively decided this cinematic trash had to exist. People relentlessly bullied a major studio through sheer meme power. It got so out of hand that Samuel L. Jackson was dragged back into the recording booth just to add more profanity. We literally cyberbullied a multi-million-dollar corporation into making a terrible movie, and it was absolutely glorious. 2. There was a time when pumpkin spice was just a harmless jar of dust in your grandmother's pantry. Then, a few years ago, it morphed into the ultimate internet punchline for anyone wearing a chunky sweater in September. But American corporations are physically incapable of understanding sarcasm. They saw our jokes and treated them like a business plan. Now we are trapped in a bizarre autumnal hostage situation featuring pumpkin spice spam, motor oil, and dog treats. What began as a collective eye roll has mutated into a billion-dollar industrial complex that ruins the grocery store for 3 solid months. 3. If you ever need undeniable proof that the American political system is just a circus with expensive lighting, look at the 2016 presidential polls. In several states, an independent candidate was casually pulling 9% of the vote. His officially registered name? D's Nuts. The mastermind behind this political juggernaut was a 15-year-old farm kid from Iowa who filled out a Federal Election Commission form as a prank. For one truly magical week, a crude middle school punchline was statistically more popular than actual career politicians. Honestly, he still might have been the most qualified guy on the ballot. 4. MS Paint was never meant to be a high art medium, yet it defined an entire generation. Think back to Trollface or the horribly depressed Forever Alone guy. These spectacularly ugly doodles started as an inside joke on niche message boards to mock angry people. Then, something deeply unsettling happened. Those crude little gremlins mutated into the universal language of the web. If you wanted to express an emotion, you didn't use words. You posted a poorly drawn pixelated face. We basically reverted to cave paintings, except instead of majestic buffalo, we drew a guy who couldn't figure out how to draw a proper circle. 5. Seeing your local morning news anchor suddenly yell, "Ahoy, matey," on a random Tuesday in September is enough to make anyone change the channel. Talk Like a Pirate Day exists for exactly one profoundly stupid reason. 2 guys in Oregon injured themselves playing racquetball, let out a painful pirate grunt, and decided to invent a holiday. It stayed their own private nerdy joke for nearly a decade. Then a humor columnist wrote about it, and the concept exploded like a powder keg. Now major fast food chains give out free food if you dress like Blackbeard. We gave these guys a global holiday for absolutely zero reason. 6. Typing dramatic slang words like sis, spilling the tea, or ending a sentence with period, complete with a hard T, started out as an ironic digital costume. Suburban kids were just trying to sound spicy online by adopting a fake persona. The whole thing was supposed to be a massive joke. It completely backfired, though, when it stumbled straight into a fierce academic debate about cultural appropriation and language theft. Who could have possibly predicted that the exact same nonsense you typed while eating cereal in your pajamas would eventually ignite a seriously angry sociological firestorm on morning talk shows? 7. Sometimes a random visual gag is so unbelievably perfect that it transcends comedy and becomes a legitimate psychological tool. Take the classic image of an anime character gesturing at a butterfly and confidently asking, "Is this a pigeon?" It was a throwaway frame from a badly translated 1990s cartoon. Yet, the internet recognized it as the absolute purest distillation of human cluelessness. The joke was so universally relatable that actual therapists started using it to explain cognitive dissonance. A split second of cheap Japanese animation somehow became the most accurate way to describe how completely bewildered we all are by modern existence. 8. For about 4 weeks in early 2013, the entire planet suffered a synchronized mental breakdown. The Harlem Shake was never a real dance. It was an uncontrollable flash mob virus. What originated as a mildly amusing video of a guy wearing a helmet in his bedroom quickly infected the global population. Suddenly, Wall Street bankers, grandmothers, and heavily armed military platoons were violently thrashing around in ridiculous costumes. And then, as if someone flipped a master switch, it completely vanished. We all just wordlessly agreed to participate in a massive, embarrassing planetary joke, and then collectively swore to take it to our graves. 9. Standing completely still, like a frozen idiot, used to be a game you played in kindergarten. But the mannequin challenge turned it into an absurd global arms race. The trend started simply enough with high school kids freezing mid-action in their classrooms. Human competitiveness quickly ruined the simplicity. It rapidly escalated from college fraternities to professional football teams, and eventually to politicians desperately trying to look relatable. The ultimate punchline arrived when astronauts actually performed the challenge while floating aboard the International Space Station. A dumb viral trend literally broke the bonds of gravity because nobody wanted to be outdone by teenagers. 10. Looking at a piece of beef the size of a car tire and thinking, yes, this is an athletic event, is a uniquely American mindset. The classic 72-ounce steak challenge, where you eat the whole thing in an hour to get it free, started purely as a cheap roadside diner gimmick. It was just a funny trap to lure in hungry highway tourists, but some folks take their gluttony extremely seriously. This localized joke accidentally birthed the utterly unhinged subculture of competitive eating. We now have actual human beings treating their digestive tracts like Olympic venues for a cheap plastic trophy. 11. Successfully doing your own laundry never used to require a public victory lap. A few years ago, somebody coined the word adulting as a highly sarcastic, self-deprecating joke to celebrate doing the absolute bare minimum, like paying a water bill. Over time, the irony completely rotted away. The joke somehow became our depressing reality. Now, adulting is the default, completely serious verb used by millions to describe basic human functioning. We literally invented a slang word because an entire generation decided that acting like a grown-up is some sort of bizarre premium subscription service that we're all just reluctantly trying out. 12. Never underestimate the ability of Americans to completely lose their minds over absolutely nothing. For 48 highly aggressive hours, society fractured into 2 warring factions over a terribly lit photograph. Was that stupid dress blue and black, or white and gold? It started as a hilarious, incredibly low-stakes argument among friends online. The debate escalated so violently that actual credentialed neuroscientists had to step in. They published peer-reviewed scientific papers just to explain how light perception works to angry people on Twitter. A genuinely stupid office debate about an ugly piece of clothing literally resulted in the advancement of human science. 13. It is genuinely wild how fast internet slang can get drafted into the military-industrial complex of modern politics. The term social justice warrior didn't start off as a furious political identifier. It was initially twisted into a sarcastic, eye-rolling joke on forums to mock overly dramatic people who picked fights in comment sections. That joke got weaponized with terrifying speed. Today, that exact phrase is used with 0% irony by cable news commentators and elected officials as a primary, heavy artillery weapon in the culture war. A petty playground taunt somehow evolved into a completely formalized political descriptor. 14. Just 2 aggressively dismissive words managed to launch a million ruined Thanksgiving dinners. When "OK Boomer" first popped up, it was just a flippant, slightly amusing comeback teenagers used on video apps to brush off grumpy older people. A digital shoulder shrug, really. But that joke rapidly detonated into a full-blown generational war cry. It became a verbal nuclear weapon deployed in corporate boardrooms, splashed across serious newspaper editorials, and was even loudly declared into a microphone at a national parliament meeting. A sarcastic teenage meme actually convinced half the country they were under direct, highly organized attack by high schoolers. 15. Future historians will have a terrible time trying to explain the big mouth Billy Bass. This plastic, battery-operated singing fish was explicitly designed to be the ultimate, slightly obnoxious gag gift. You were supposed to laugh once and throw it in the garage. Yet, this joke product became so entirely inescapable that it practically became mandatory home decor. Millions of Americans inexplicably decided that a rubber bass singing "Don't Worry, Be Happy" was high-end art. It was a temporary punchline that permanently glued itself to the wood-paneled walls of our collective sanity. Truly a dark time for interior design. 16. A completely idiotic internet joke actually holds enough power to make the United States military sweat bullets. The Storm Area 51 Facebook event was explicitly labeled as a massive, sarcastic meme, where millions pledged to run like ninjas past armed guards to see some aliens. It was a giant digital joke. The humor quickly evaporated when thousands of deeply weird people actually packed their cars and drove to the Nevada desert. The Air Force literally had to issue stern, official press releases threatening to defend a highly classified military installation from internet trolls. Let that profound absurdity sink in for a moment. 17. Can a misspelled word about being terribly bad with money actually cripple the global financial system? The entire "stonks" meme was created as a self-deprecating joke by amateur traders online who fully admitted they had no idea what they were doing. It was a digital badge of financial incompetence. But they leaned into the punchline so hard that they essentially unionized. By collectively rallying behind joke stocks like an outdated video game retailer, they caused real multi-billion-dollar hemorrhaging for elite Wall Street hedge funds. They financially ruined actual billionaires simply because they thought it would be intensely funny. 18. The English dictionary is frequently held hostage by the entertainment industry. Take the word catfishing. When that strange, low-budget documentary first premiered, the title itself felt like an artsy, highly specific joke about a very weird, isolated case of online deception. Nobody thought the word had staying power. But the concept was so overwhelmingly common in the modern age of social media that it instantly stopped being just a movie title. It aggressively mutated into the standard, universal verb for having your heart broken by a 40-year-old man pretending to be a 20-something model on the internet. 19. Modern visual comedy requires you to embrace complete destruction. Take a perfectly normal image, crank the saturation up to a blinding level, compress it until it looks like a pile of digital gravel, and add some glowing red eyes. Congratulations, you've made a deep-fried meme. The entire origin of this trend was a highly sarcastic joke mocking the terrible, pixelated quality of images that get reshared too many times. But irony is a dangerous game. This joke about ruining visual quality completely backfired and became an intensely popular, heavily analyzed, and legitimate art style for an entire generation of digital creators. 20. Rickrolling is the internet's indestructible cockroach. It will easily survive a nuclear apocalypse. Born as a deeply annoying bait-and-switch joke on a sweaty, forgotten message board, it was supposed to be funny for exactly 1 week in 2007. Instead, this pop music prank escaped the laboratory and infected reality itself. It became so incredibly powerful that it has been used by massive corporations, military bands, and even the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. A highly specific prank involving an 80s pop star has somehow managed to outlive dozens of actual, heavily funded social media platforms. 21. Building an empire of wealth based entirely on having a terrible attitude and poor pronunciation sounds impossible, but America proudly says yes. When a chaotic teenager went on daytime television and angrily threatened the audience with her bizarre "cash me outside" catchphrase, the whole country laughed. She was a walking, talking punchline of bad parenting. But while we were all busy laughing, she hired a management team. She weaponized our mockery, launched a music career, and turned that national joke into a multi-million-dollar fortune. It is the most absurd, deeply American success story. Become the joke, then charge admission. 22. Every year at Harvard University, Some of the absolute sharpest scientific minds on the planet gather for a highly formal ceremony. Actual Nobel laureates show up to hand out awards. The catch? The awards are for incredibly stupid things, like mathematically proving that cats qualify as both a solid and a liquid. The Ig Nobel Prize was entirely conceived as a cynical parody to mock weird research. Yet, against all odds, winning this joke prize has become one of the most coveted, highly respected honors in the world of fringe science. Scientists now desperately hope their bizarre side projects are funny enough to win. 23. If you went back 15 years and told someone you could make millions of dollars just by gently scratching a hairbrush near a highly sensitive microphone, they would have laughed in your face. When ASMR first slithered onto the internet, it sounded like the setup for a truly bizarre, deeply uncomfortable joke. People whispering incoherently while tapping their fingernails on a plastic box. Surely this was a massive prank. The real punchline was that it miraculously actually worked. What began as a highly mocked, strange little internet subculture exploded into a massive, globally recognized industry dedicated purely to helping stressed-out people fall asleep. 24. The internet has a very hard time processing tragedy, so it usually just defaults to pure, unadulterated chaos. The controversial incident involving Harambe, the gorilla at the zoo, instantly spawned a massive tidal wave of highly ironic, incredibly strange memes. It was a dark joke to cope with weird news. Then, the joke severely derailed. People started holding unironic candlelight vigils in public parks and creating extremely sincere, aggressive political petitions in his name. The line between sarcastic internet irony and genuine, unsettling grief blurred so heavily that sociologists are probably still trying to figure out what was actually wrong with us that year. 25. No single illustration has ever captured the exhausting reality of modern adult life quite so perfectly. We all know the image. A crude cartoon dog calmly sipping a mug of coffee while sitting at a table in a room completely engulfed in roaring flames declaring, "This is fine." Originally, it was just a two-panel joke in an obscure webcomic. A simple piece of dark, throwaway humor. Society recognized itself in those terrified, unblinking cartoon eyes. That random doodle completely bypassed its joke status to become the official, universally accepted flag of our collective societal denial and impending doom. 26. Pitching this sequence of events in a Hollywood comedy script would get you fired for being way too unbelievable. We are talking about the infamous Four Seasons Total Landscaping press conference. A high-stakes political briefing was accidentally booked at a gritty garage next to a crematorium and an adult bookstore. It felt like the universe itself was executing a masterclass prank. The situation was so perfectly pathetic and absurdly hilarious that this random local landscaping company instantly transformed into a legendary historical landmark of American political comedy. They literally sold out of t-shirts in hours, laughing all the way to the bank. 27. A retail store dies, its carcass goes cold, and exactly 4 minutes later, a Spirit Halloween banner magically appears over the door. It is the single most predictable, yet intensely aggressive event of the American autumn. The internet's running gag about this company acting as a parasitic demon, possessing dead strip malls is completely hilarious. Here is the terrifying part, though. The joke is literally their actual, highly successful business model. They have built a multi-hundred-million-dollar empire relying entirely on the most temporary, opportunistic, and chaotic form of capitalism imaginable. The Grim Reaper of retail is highly profitable. 28. Before homeowners associations ruled the world with an iron fist, pink plastic flamingos were the ultimate neighborhood prank. In the 1950s, you bought these hideous neon birds specifically to mock your neighbor's pristine lawn. It was an aggressive, tacky joke. But Americans have a weird relationship with garbage. Instead of throwing them away, people started proudly displaying them. Fast forward a few decades, and this neon plastic punchline is literally considered a sacred, historical piece of classic Americana. We basically weaponized bad taste and called it culture. 29. Walking into a boardroom of executives and pitching a massive tornado completely filled with extremely angry, man-eating sharks should result in an immediate security escort out of the building. A concept that profoundly stupid has no business existing. But the internet saw the trailer for Sharknado and collectively decided to be entirely complicit in the joke. Millions of people hate-watched it so aggressively that they turned a guaranteed cinematic disaster into a massively profitable 6-movie global cult franchise. It was built completely on the back of one terrible, scientifically impossible pun, and we simply ate it up. 30. Filming yourself doing incredibly painful, idiotic things for absolutely no reason sounds like something a heavily intoxicated frat boy suggests at 3 in the morning. The original concept for Jackass wasn't a structured television show. It was essentially just a violent, highly documented dare between bored skateboarders. That specific brand of heavily bruised stupidity somehow resonated with the American spirit. That localized joke miraculously spawned a billion-dollar blockbuster movie franchise, turning a group of reckless friends into heavily insured international superstars, strictly because they were willing to get shot out of cannons. 31. Let us be brutally honest with ourselves. The Chia Pet has always been a complete and utter joke. It is literally just a cheap terracotta sculpture of a head that grows a disturbing afro of green sprouts. Nobody has ever bought one of these things because they needed a serious botanical companion. Yet this wildly kitschy, ridiculous product has aggressively dominated late-night television commercials for over 4 decades. It's an incredibly stupid novelty gag that somehow bullied its way into becoming a permanent, heavily nostalgic fixture of American consumer culture. We keep buying them as a joke, and they keep cashing the checks. 32. Somewhere out there, a visionary psychopath stood in a muddy field and said the words "goat yoga" entirely out loud. Instead of being immediately institutionalized, they somehow managed to start a massive business craze. It literally sounds like the rejected punchline to a bad joke about crazy rich people. Yet, it aggressively transformed into a legitimate, thriving boutique fitness industry. Today, fully grown adults in expensive athletic wear enthusiastically pay serious money to try and find inner peace while farm animals literally trample over their spines. The joke is no longer funny. It's just a highly lucrative business model. 33. I desperately need you to try and imagine a world where this specific accessory didn't originate as an absurd, laugh-out-loud joke. We are talking about giant pairs of plastic anatomical testicles swinging wildly from the trailer hitches of excessively lifted pickup trucks. It absolutely has to be a highly sarcastic parody of fragile hypermasculinity, right? Well, maybe originally, but now thousands of highly aggressive men actually purchase these things and display them on the highway with what appears to be 100% absolute sincerity. At what specific speed limit did the original punchline completely detach and fall off? 34. Long before the modern word meme was infecting our daily vocabulary, the early internet forged a weapon of mass comedy known as Chuck Norris facts. It started as a purely sarcastic, incredibly absurd list of hyperbolic claims about an aging action star's invincibility. You know, stuff like Chuck Norris doesn't sleep, he waits. The internet repeated the joke so loudly and for so long that it practically altered reality. It became such a powerful, universally understood language that it stopped being a quirky joke and cemented itself as a bizarre, officially accepted piece of modern American mythology. He's practically a folk god now. 35. By its very definition, playing the air guitar is a frantic, sweaty performance of absolutely nothing. It is the ultimate drunken bar joke. Yet, humanity's desire to overcomplicate everything has taken this joke and made it terrifyingly serious. There is now a heavily organized, dead-serious, internationally recognized air guitar world championship. Fully grown adults train rigorously for months. They wear costumes. They compete with fierce, unblinking intensity. They literally cry tears of joy when they win a plastic trophy for strumming empty oxygen. Are you honestly going to tell me we haven't slipped into the weirdest possible alternate timeline? 36. reaching a point where the head of the United States Consumer Product Safety Commission has to get on national television to loudly beg citizens to stop eating laundry detergent is a new low for humanity. The infamous Tide Pod Challenge originated as a highly dark, deeply ironic meme. It was just a weird, digital joke about colorful soap looking like delicious forbidden fruit. Teenagers completely lack highly developed frontal lobes, though, and the joke became so overwhelmingly viral that it sparked a genuine nationwide public health crisis. A sarcastic tweet literally forced a multi-billion-dollar soap company to redesign its packaging. 37. Growing the ugliest, creepiest mustache possible for an entire month started out over a few beers as an incredibly stupid, highly regrettable dare between friends. It was a very simple, intensely dumb joke. Here is where the story stops being ridiculous and gets genuinely staggering, though. That exact same joke, now known globally as Movember, took off like wildfire and has since raised well over $1 billion for men's health research. It is a massive, highly organized global force for good that was birthed entirely from pure, unadulterated facial hair silliness. Sometimes being an idiot actually pays off for the world. 38. Nobody in the 1980s thought wearing a sweater aggressively bedazzled with reindeer was funny. It was just tragic fashion. Then, sarcastic hipsters in the early 2000s started throwing ugly sweater parties purely to mock their parents' awful taste. It was an exercise in intense irony. But corporate America aggressively hijacked the joke. Today, wearing a hideous, itchy, light-up sweater is an absolute mandatory requirement for every single holiday office party. We took a sarcastic hipster prank and turned it into an inescapable multi-million-dollar seasonal uniform. 39. A backwards robe made of cheap fleece is not exactly high fashion. The original television commercials for the Snuggie were a cinematic masterclass in total lameness, instantly transforming it into a massive national joke. You only bought it as a highly insulting gag gift for a friend to symbolize that they had completely given up on life. But then came that cold, painfully quiet moment of truth. You were alone on your couch, freezing, and you slipped your arms through those ridiculous sleeves. The horrifying realization hit you. You unironically love it. The joke completely won, and our collective dignity was officially defeated by fleece. 40. The fundamental structural purpose of a dad joke is that it is explicitly designed to be absolutely terrible. The sheer, physical cringe you feel is supposed to be the actual punchline. Yet, over the last decade, this specific brand of agonizing anti-humor broke containment. It became so fiercely and universally beloved by the internet that it's now an officially recognized subcategory of comedy. We took objectively awful, deeply groan-inducing puns, and as a society, collectively gaslit ourselves into deciding they were a high-end art form. We are practically rewarding fathers for being painfully, unapologetically unfunny. 41. Sitting down to consume over 4 pounds of solid cow is usually a sign of deep psychological distress, but in Texas, it's a career path. The Big Texan Steakhouse originally rolled out their monstrous 72-ounce eating challenge as a completely absurd, tongue-in-cheek gimmick to shock weary highway travelers. It was essentially a culinary prank. Americans simply cannot resist a terrible idea disguised as a dare, though. That greasy joke violently snowballed into a heavily sanctioned professional sport. We now have fully sponsored athletes who stretch their stomachs like balloons just to participate in highly televised meat marathons. 42. It is incredibly rare to see a political catchphrase go on such a violently psychotic roller coaster ride. The phrase, "Thanks, Obama," originally started as a highly sincere, deeply bitter complaint from his critics. Almost instantly, it morphed into a sarcastic internet meme where people blamed the president for completely unrelated things like stubbing a toe or dropping a hot dog. The true knockout punchline arrived when President Obama himself literally ruined the meme by sarcastically saying it while struggling to dunk a cookie in milk on video. He basically weaponized the joke against the internet, effectively killing it on the spot. 43. Selling absolute garbage to the public and becoming a millionaire sounds like a pipe dream. But in the 1970s, advertising executive Gary Dahl proved it was possible. After making a drunken joke in a bar about a rock being the ultimate low-maintenance pet, he incredibly decided to call the universe's bluff. He packaged smooth stones in cardboard carriers, complete with a highly detailed, deeply hilarious training manual. He wasn't actually selling geology. He was selling a beautifully packaged 32-page joke. Naturally, a highly gullible America proved they would eagerly buy absolute nothingness by the truckload. 44. Injecting a joke into your own flesh is the absolute ultimate, most dangerous commitment to comedy. The explosive trend of ironic tattoos began as a highly self-aware, deeply sarcastic way to heavily mock people with bad, generic body art. A tiny, badly drawn cartoon hot dog on your bicep is just so avant-garde, right? The massive, glaring problem with visual irony is that the cultural context fades away incredibly fast, but the black ink is fiercely permanent. You made a sarcastic joke in 2014, and now you have to exhaustively explain it at every pool party until you die. 45. Looking for the exact moment when the global economy completely detached from reality? Look no further than Dogecoin. The formula was staggering. Take a highly pixelated photograph of a mildly confused Japanese dog, slap some grammatically incorrect neon text on it, and code it into a fake digital currency. From its very first keystroke, it was explicitly engineered to be a complete and utter mockery of cryptocurrency. Yet investors blindly flooded it with cash. A literal digital prank is now terrifyingly worth more than the entire gross domestic product of several small, highly functional nations. Economics is basically a hallucination at this point. 46. Strapping a blinking computer to your body just to prove you took a nap used to be heavily mocked as deeply neurotic nerd behavior. Wearing clunky fitness trackers started off as an ironically funny, highly obsessive way to overanalyze a trip to the grocery store. Somehow, gadgets like biometric rings and highly elastic wristbands mutated into elite status symbols. What began as a joke about tracking steps has violently spiraled into a dead-serious, highly expensive bodily recovery cult. We now have perfectly healthy adult men smugly bragging about their deep REM cycles like they just bought a Ferrari. 47. You can essentially set your watch to the incredibly depressing life cycle of American pop culture. First, the dab was a genuinely cool, highly stylized dance move, originating deep in Atlanta hip-hop. Next, it rapidly evolved into a slightly cocky victory pose for highly paid professional athletes. The final, absolutely fatal blow came when elderly politicians and heavily sprayed news anchors started awkwardly doing it on live television to desperately prove how hip they were. An entire cultural phenomenon went from insanely cool to an aggressively unbearable parody in the span of one single tragic arm movement. 48. Crashing onto reality television with an aggressively contoured, surgically enhanced, completely poreless look honestly felt like a highly exaggerated parody at first. The Kardashian aesthetic was like looking at a walking, breathing caricature of wealthy excess. People endlessly made fun of the ridiculous lips and the physics-defying proportions. The sheer, relentless exposure of the joke was overwhelmingly powerful, though. It completely stopped being a punchline and quietly became the absolute mandatory digital blueprint for millions of women online. What does it actually say about a society when a highly mocked parody seamlessly transforms into the exact ideal we are desperately chasing? 49. There was a brief moment in time when Florida Man was just a funny Twitter account, highlighting the bizarre arrest records generated by the state's aggressive sunshine laws. It was a localized joke about guys fighting alligators in convenience stores. But the internet leaned into the gag so heavily that it completely erased the state's actual identity. Florida Man isn't a joke anymore. It is the official, internationally recognized mythology of an entire peninsula. We took a handful of mugshots and permanently branded 22 million people as unhinged swamp gladiators. 50. If you have ever touched a computer mouse in your life, you know this absolutely legendary battle cry. Shouting Leroy Jenkins is the internet's ultimate highly chaotic symbol of glorious catastrophic failure. Here is the deeply guarded secret that ruins the magic, though. The entire viral video was completely staged. It was an intricately planned, heavily rehearsed joke completely fabricated by a group of nerdy friends simply to make fun of their own gaming habits. Yet that completely fake manufactured punchline miraculously became the defining, highly emotional anthem for an entire, massive generation of online players. We built a culture on a lie. We built an entire culture on bad punchlines. I want to know in the comments, what is the most embarrassing viral trend or stupid internet joke you unironically participated in? Confess your sins. No one is judging except everyone reading it. Drop a like on the way down and subscribe if you want to keep watching the slow collapse of American dignity.